Hi everybody, I just got done playing the next 1,000 hands, all in pretty much one day, which is a stark contrast to the last one, which it took me a whole week to do. But I have just really gotten involved in the 2NL streets, and it's just been a lot of fun. So I've got 5 pots through this time instead of 4 because each of them had something special about them that I just could not ignore. I really couldn't bring myself to leave any of them out to keep it to a top 4. So we're going to go through 5. I hope you guys are okay with this. Let's start with this one. We open Ace King offsuit under the gun. We get a call from a fishy kind of player, and a call from a really wide, really aggressive kind of player. Flops Ace Ace 8 with a flush draw, and on this kind of board, because it's multi-way, I always default to checking entire range, because we're out of position multi-way. Well, the fact that it's multi-way in the first place means that we have to be really careful with our value bets. And if we value bet, it can't be thin at all. So if we do decide to bet, it has to be really strong, and it's often just a lot easier to implement a check range strategy to keep your entire range protected, so that when you do check, you can't just be run over by bluffs. So I check, and it checks round. It turns the 7 of spades, bringing the front door flush, and we see a pot-sized bet. I think it's a fairly easy call. I think raising doesn't have much merit because we are multi-way and we've still got this guy to act. Kind of like the first decision on the flop, we've got to be really careful with our bets and raises multi-way because they should indicate a lot of strength. And raising top trips, top kicker, would be slightly overplaying in my opinion. Of course it's not that bad to raise, but I think calling and playing the river is a lot easier. We heads up to the river, which is the insignificant deuce, and we see another pot-sized bet. Now, this is where hindsight and going back over your hands really proves valuable. I remember in real time snapping this off. I snap called because most players, when they pot, indicates a boat or a flush, and they won't have worse ace-x very often. They will have sometimes, they'll have like ace-queen, ace-jack, but the combinations of those versus 8s, 7s, ace-8, ace-7, ace-deuce, and flushes are enough so that the value raise would be rather thin. However, with hindsight, you've got to notice that I've got the king of spades, which blocks a lot of flush combos. Like having the top flush card doesn't allow him to have any king x spades, which is about half of all his flush combos from the big blind. When you really think about it, he'll have all the king x suited, but he won't have all the queen x suited or jack x suited. He'll have like queen, well, a reasonable person might have queen 5 suited plus. I mean, he obviously could have queen deuce suited plus, but with jack x suited, becomes a bit weaker, and then 10x suited, he won't have 10 deuce suited, will he? He'll just have a lot of, when it comes to 10x suited, it'll be like 10-9 suited. And with the 8 and the 7 already out there, a lot of the suited connectors are discounted. So the king of spades makes up for almost half of all of his flush combos. That being said, if I actually look at his stats, which I didn't do in real time and I really should have done, his flop aggression seems alright. I'm looking at his flop bets. Notice his flop calls, he never folds. But more specifically, look at his flop bets and then his turn bets. He bets almost 100%, and then river bets, he will bet 100%. Because he's betting with a really wide range from turn and river, the turns when he potted, and the rivers when he potted again, and he's doing this with an extremely wide range, if I jam, which I think I should jam, I will almost certainly get called by ace-queen, ace-jack, ace-10, ace-9, maybe even ace-6, ace-5, ace-4, and ace-3, because this kind of wild player would probably call with those hands. So I really, really dislike the flat, and like this is probably the strongest I felt about my past self, and it's definitely a point where I can learn from, rather than just autopiloting and just snap calling versus the entire population. Look at my actual hand, which sounds simple, but really I didn't realize in real time how much the king of spades meant, and also realizing that a player this wide will probably call. So just exploit a little bit from me. I should have exploited a little bit and just jammed. In any case, I called, and this time he did have a bluff, which is obviously fine. He's not going to call that. But just versus the other parts of his range, I really should have jammed. Okay, let's look at this hand. This hand is interesting, I think. We see an under the gun open from a fairly wide player. Only 38 hands, so obviously we can't make any reads yet, but he just looks like he's getting some laggy stats going on. We 3-bet ace-10 suited, which is the worst ace-x suited I'll 3-bet here because of the high rake environment. And we see a call, heads up to 8-3-3 with a flush draw. As I said in all of my other videos, 3-bet pots, I'll have the stronger range. C-bet 1/3 pot, which I do, and we face a check raise. So this check raise leaves an interesting decision. Obviously, my exact hand, I've got the nut flush draw. If I decide to jam, I'll be risking 190 to win 113, plus I'll have lots of equity when called by either a pocket pair or an 8x, or I can even get called by King Queen of clubs. Players will make those mistakes quite often, and if that's the case, I'll actually be getting in very far ahead. So all in all, jamming would be profitable. But I have to consider calling as well. Would calling be more profitable than jamming? If I call, I'll be calling 40 cents into a 113 pot, in which case I'll need to really hit an ace-10 or club turn. And I'm not sure I'm really getting those direct odds. Like, it seems a bit close when you consider call. And because of this, in real time, I didn't have to do exact calculations of calling and future turns, future rivers, future actions, because I just know that it seems kind of weaker compared to a jam. Now, that's with my exact hand, but what about my range? Well, overpairs, like aces, kings, queens, jacks, would always prefer to jam, in my opinion. Maybe not aces, because aces is kind of special, but kings, queens and jacks would definitely prefer to jam to get the most value from pocket pairs, lower pocket pairs that will call, and to try and get the most money in versus a flush, because they'll probably call it off really light here. So actually, with my entire range, a jam instead of a call makes a lot of sense, which leads me to believe that maybe I just won't have any calls facing this check raise, which is kind of interesting. And that kind of situation does happen fairly often in like these kind of 3-bet pots, check raise spots, because I have looked at this kind of spot in PO, and this is definitely a kind of spot where the player in my position could definitely argue for a strategy with no calls facing the check raise. In any case, I do decide to jam, and we get tank called by 9s with a club. So we are basically flipping versus that, and unfortunately this time we don't get there. Okay, the third hand. This is quite interesting. I've got a little screenshot for you prepared because I'm not bullshitting when I give you my pre-flop strategy here. I open blind v blind, king 3 suited, and I get 3-bet by a fairly aggressive person, but we can't make any wide assumptions on his 3-bet range just yet. We just know that it's going to be fairly... maybe it's probably going to be wider than the average 2NL player. Versus all players, I've actually got a pre-prepared solution that adjusts for rake. I want to show you this snippet, because I don't want to show you everything, but I'll show you the snippet just to back it up. Small blind versus big blind. If I open and get 3-bet, I have to 4-bet and then call off a 5-bet jam with 10s plus, ace king and ace queen suited, and I'll 4-bet and fold ace deuce suited, king 3 suited, ace jack off, and jack 10 off. The reason why this exists is because obviously you need to have a balanced 4-bet range, blind v blind, because the ranges get really wide. So it does get to that point where you can't just like 4-bet call off with queens plus ace king, because you'll have way wider ranges than that. And because they get wide, you have to balance a little bit, because you need to make money with your bluffs and your value, not just your value. Having bluffs increases the value of your 4-bet, because then the opponents can't just fold versus you, obviously, and that's that whole GTO adage of why ever bluff? Because it increases the value of your entire range, right? So you do have to 4-bet a small proportion of the time, and I think Exact GTO recommends that you mix a lot of the hands. But because I really can't be asked using a randomizer or anything like that, I just have specific hands that I'll 4-bet fold, which obviously is somewhat exploitable when you see a flop of 3-3-3, because my king 3 suited will always hit that. But like in reality, in practical terms, it really doesn't make that much of a difference. It just keeps the frequencies the same, and it also removes the human error of like, well, I just feel like 4-betting bluffing this time, because I actually have a set range for it, and I'm not allowing myself to deviate from it, so the math's already prepared. So I do 4-bet bluff king 3 suited. 4-bet bluff, get a snap call. I remember it was quite snappy. See a flop ace 5-4, and I believe with my range looking like this, my villain will actually have a fairly condensed cap range, as is the most common thing post flop. Because of that, I believe that c-betting 1/3 or 1/4 in 4-bet pots is very good. So I c-bet 1/4 pot with my entire range. Get snap called, looking for the deuce on the turn, but it doesn't come. We see another 4, and this is the spot where we have to split between our value and our bluffs, between betting and checking basically. And I think there's $1 left into $2. Bluffing can't be that bad, but it's just gonna. It feels like it's going to run into an ace extremely often, and that ace is not going to fold. So I just end up check folding, which I think is pretty okay actually. So we check fold that. Okay, fourth hand, pocket kings. See an open, and we squeeze. Well, not squeeze. We 3-bet, and we get a call. This guy's quite wide, and he's developed a massive stack. I remember $4 is actually from me, because we've got it all in pre, and we're flipping both times, but he won both times. So that's part of the reason. Like, he's got 4 of my dollars. Obviously, that shouldn't influence our decision with this hand, but we just kind of know that he's quite wild. So we get a 9-7-3 flop, and we just get donk pot into. When someone donk pots, I always make sure to check how often they're doing aggressive actions. Unfortunately, we don't have that many samples. What we do know is that his check raise or re-raise on the flop is extremely high. So is there a difference between check raising and donk potting? I mean, it's really hard to say. This is one of those spots where I don't know my opponent's overall strategy, but what I can say is that it feels like he's punting. Like, he's really wide pre. He's really wide with his check raises, with his re-raises on the flop. Even though he hasn't donked yet, he's just going to be really wild. So, given that he's overall going to be quite wild, I think I can make the argument for just calling off pretty much whatever the runout is. So, I call off the flop. The turn is a 5 of hearts, which brings in a lot of backdoor draws, makes the board a lot connectier, and he pots again. Now, because I have kings here, which values a lot of protection, and also can guarantee value from like ace-9, which might check fold on the river, I think that jamming here is just arguably the best play. We're risking 2 to win 2, but we're not really risking 2 to win 2 in my opinion. We're trying to get the most value in, and because the board's very scary, we want to try and capture all the EV from 8s, any 9x, any 10s, jacks, or any like kind of weird combo draw that he's got. Obviously we'll lose into sets and straights sometimes, or 2 pairs, but if you consider that versus all the other hands he could have which we're beating, we definitely do want to put it in here. We do put it in. We get snapped off by ace-7, which further strengthens the turn jam, because a hand like ace-7, I don't know if he's going to check fold that on the river, but the fact that he bet calls it on the turn obviously marks him as an aggressive whale, but like, if he's going to do that, then why would you consider calling the turn, right? There's so many hands that he has which we can capture the EV from, by just jamming here. So we do, and manage to hold. This is the kind of river that he might fold on the river, so pretty happy with my decision, and we scoop that one for ourselves. Last hand to go through is this one. This is a bit more routine for me, not that interesting in my opinion, but I believe will be different to what a lot of people play, and I just want to explain why that's the case. Get a raise, get a call, and I decide to squeeze. Nice healthy size, we get a call and a call. So before I even reach a flop, I know that I'm going to be multi-way in a 3-bet pot and out of position. So I'm going to check range on pretty much every board, including this one. Even though I flopped the flush, I'm checking my entire range. This guy just decides to bet pot, which can't be good. I don't know what kind of strategy this guy is using, but there's 179 in the middle. I've got 179 behind. Calling makes virtually no sense, because if I'm calling, I'm committing half my stack, and with all hands, if you're committing half your stack, it's more effective to jam anyway. So I jam, and get snapped off by ace queen with no spade. So we scoop that one as well. This is just a really nice product of checking your entire range. Someone with ace queen might not believe that you're willing to check a flush on this kind of flop, but they'll just be misreading into your strategy, and I know that my strategy is quite sound. So that worked out well for us, and I just want to show you the overall effect of all the hands that I've played. We broke even. Not gonna lie, we had a nice upswing at the start, and then we just lost it all. This is a 4-buy-in downswing right here in 300 hands. Life can be pretty brutal sometimes, but that's the way it goes. A lot of this was down to losing flips pre as well, I'm not gonna lie. Not trying to be that salty, but I'm allowing myself to be a bit salty, because having a BB per 100 of 0.8 when you're all in adjusted as 16, it's a little bit wild, I'm not gonna lie. My line should be here, but it's down here. And it is what it is, but 1,500 hands is nothing in the grand scheme of things. You just gotta take the variance as it comes. If I look at the progress that we've made so far, we were down here, and as I said, we broke even. We hit a nice little upswing, but then we quickly ran into that downswing, and we're just breaking even again. We just gotta plow through and just try and play the best poker we can. Our win rate's down to 9 big blinds per 100, down from 10, but that's okay. I'm just going to keep playing. Alright guys, that's it for now. I'll see you in the next 1,000 hands. Almost at 20,000 hands. Gonna be pretty hype. See you then. Goodbye.